once the people living in the Americas discovered agriculture, they began to settle down and adjust to their surroundings. And in some cases, the farming villages that developed grew into large towns. From there, they grew into large cities, and in some cases, actually grew into full scale civilization with an organized government, an organized religion, in some cases, even written languages. Now, the first American civilization is the Olmec. Now, the Olmec were located in the Yucatan Peninsula in what is now southern Mexico. And they would have a huge influence on the other civilizations that came after them, such as the Maya and the Aztec. They were polytheistic, which means that they believed in several gods. They believed that their gods demanded blood sacrifice. Um, they began developing a written language, and um, they were known for constructing these large heads made out of basalt. And all of these heads, you'll see some photographs in just a moment. All these heads tend to have a flat nose and slightly crossed eyes. So this is probably our best indicator of what the Olmec people actually looked like. Now, the Olmecs disappeared around the year 300 BC. And over time, the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula slowly reclaimed their cities. So it's very hard to find evidence that the Olmec were even there to begin with. It's there, but it's hidden under thick jungle. Several hundred years after the Olmec disappeared, another civilization grew up in about the same area, and this was the Maya. Now, the Mayans, they are known for their math skills. They developed an extremely accurate calendar that had 365 days in a year. Um, uh, they were they actually mapped the stars and would use this information to predict the seasons, just how hot and dry or how wet the season was going to be. So, like the Olmec, the Maya were a very impressive civilization. They also believed that their gods demanded blood sacrifice. They completed the written language that had been started by the Olmec. Now, here's a map that shows the areas that these early civilizations were located in. You see the Maya down in this area, and before them, the Olmec had also inhabited this area. And in just a moment, we will talk about the Aztec that lived in central Mexico and the Inca that lived on the west coast of South America. Here are the Olmec heads that I told you about. You can see the flat noses and the crossed eyes. Maybe a good indicator of what they look like. This is another large city that was located near present-day Mexico City called Teotihuacan. This is considered to be the largest, or the first large city in North America. And the Maya. The Maya were known for their great pyramids. These are two of the best-known examples. Tikal, which you see on the left, was the largest of all the Mayan cities. It's located in present-day Guatemala. And on the right, the beautiful pyramid of Chichen Itza. It's located in the Yucatan Peninsula. And what's interesting is if you count all the steps on all four sides, the number adds up to 365. Probably a representation of the year, the number of days in the year for some reason. Our last two American civilizations are the Aztec and the Inca. Beginning with the Aztec, they were originally a nomadic group that came from somewhere in the north. They made their way south into what is now central Mexico, and according to Aztec tradition, they believed that their gods would give them a sign when they reached their homeland. And this sign that they were looking for was an eagle standing on a cactus with a snake in its beak. Now, if that rings a bell with anyone, that is because that is on the national flag of Mexico. Well, they eventually did see this. They saw the eagle with the snake on the cactus, and this was on an island in the middle of a lake. So they began constructing a city on this lake, which they named Tenochtitlan. I may be butchering that pronunciation. And it was a very, very impressive city. When the Spanish discovered it in the early 1500s, they said that there was nothing in Europe that compared to it. They could not believe how clean the streets were. There was actually a garbage disposal system. The Aztecs completely overturned our common perception of what Native Americans were like. They believed that, like the Mayans and the Olmec, they believed that their gods demanded a blood sacrifice, and if they did not sacrifice several people every day, the sun would cease to move across the sky. So many, many people were sacrificed by the Aztecs. Then the Inca. They were located in the Andes Mountains of South America, and this was the largest empire in North or South America. Very much like the Romans, the Inca were able to control their empire using an extensive road system. Now, the wheel was never invented in the Americas. So the road system that the Incas used, whenever they would go up the sides of mountains, were actually carved into steps. So for people traveling on foot, this was very convenient. Would not have worked if they had wheeled vehicles, but they never invented that. The Incan emperor would rule his empire from the capital city of Cusco, and he would communicate with the rest of his empire using messengers who would run from one city to the other. Now, it always amazed the Spanish just how long these runners could go without taking a break. And eventually, their secret was discovered. There was a plant that was native to that part of South America that these runners would keep in their belts whenever they were going from one city to the next. And as they grew tired from running, they would start to chew on this leaf and they would get a burst of energy. Later on, scientists studied this miraculous plant, and that plant turned out to be the coca leaf, where cocaine comes from. Yeah, just interesting fact for you. All right. That what you're seeing right there is the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan. That is actually located on the site of present-day Mexico City. Um, a quick, interesting side note: the Aztec did not call themselves the Aztec; they called themselves the Mexica, and it's from that name, Mexica, that we get the name Mexico. So Mexico actually gets its name from the Aztec. Um, like I said, the Aztec are well known for their human sacrifices. They carried several out every day, and the ritual included the victim's heart being cut out and held up high for all to see. Going back to the Inca, this is their most famous city. It is called Machu Picchu. And it's not entirely known what Machu Picchu was used for. Some think that this is where the Incan priest would live. Others believe that this was a resort for the Incan emperor. But whatever the case, very, very beautiful location. I would love to go there someday. Notice very quickly these steps that are carved into the side of the mountain. These are called terraces, and the reason why they are the reason why they were built is because it made it easier to grow crops on the side of the mountain. They got more direct sunlight, and erosion was not water runoff was not as big of an issue whenever the crops were being grown on the terraces.